Hello everybody, my name is Scraggy and this is a more casual video. So recently WGP Tokyo happened and you can see the top 32 on the screen right now. This is on VG Paradox, so feel free to go there to look at it yourself. But for me, what I wanted to do is quickly go over some of the meta picks, or more specifically, why I think some decks worked really well and why one specific deck didn't. And then in addition to that, we're gonna go over some of the kind of newer decks that are on the scene right now, and some of the quirkier decks that popped up in top 32. Then finally, I'm going to go over what I think a trend is in deck building that you could try and consider for your decks going forward in this metagame, and what I think will result in you seeing the most success. Full disclosure here, this is a very unscripted video, mostly speaking off the cuff, so nothing too scripted. One more thing is that I am not a necessarily good player or topping player. I don't really have the accolades to say I'm a good player, but what I do have is hours of doom scrolling and looking at data points and trends within decks that I could be a good coach to you, or at least just give you a little bit of inspiration and point you in the right direction for further tournament play. So what I'm trying to say with that is don't take my word as gospel, but I do think there is some validity in what I'm trying to tell you. So first things first, this is the top 32, but this pie chart does not match what the overall play rate was. The overall play rate looks something like this. As you can see, there's a lot of Lianorn here. In fact, Lianorn is the top one here. The 9% of the total player base brought the deck. This is an individual tournament, about 1,000 plus players, and 9% of them thought Lianorn was a good pick. You can see Clearlight doesn't trail too far behind, followed by Youthberg, then a lot of the set 9 good decks, followed by, fan favorite Drajul, then Liel, and Jheva's here and Krysrain. So that's what the meta landscape looks like. If every player brought the deck they thought would be the best suited to win, this graph should be a really good estimate as to what the top 32 would look like, right? As in, if everyone brought what they thought was going to win and they were correct on that, then top 32 matches this graph. But it doesn't. Instead, top 32 is this graph, so lovingly crafted by Fuzzy Paradox. And as you can see, someone didn't perform as well as we thought she would. Lianorn Traumend has always been in a little bit of contention when it comes to how good she is. Some people thought she was unstoppable, SSS tier, incredible speed and power. And a lot of people thought she was kind of inconsistent, she didn't have a lot of the guarding that other decks do. So what kind of happened here? Well, I think for a lot of players, we probably all built Lianorn a little something like this. Sorry, not this one. I think a lot of us probably would have built Lianorn something like this, knowing what Vivace does. So, as you can see here, we're on multiple Moemors, multiple Rosarium Fairies, we're on the Sincerets. I imagine some of you would also be playing the Silver-White Order, which gives a ton of power to one of your rear guards. In addition to the Vivace here, which is used for the drive checking, and it's used for kind of a backup plan in case you miss the Traumend Persona ride. These kind of lists didn't top. Obviously, no Lianorn topped except for one. And you can see this guy's win rate here. Over 9 rounds, they lost 3. So 6-3, not a good enough score to make top cut, a really cutthroat tournament. So what kind of list did succeed? Well, as I've already leaked, this is the kind of list that did well. It's not open on Decklock because the link on Fuzzy Paradox's website is wrong for now. I'm too lazy to open it up correctly, but this is the post that the guy made. And also he does say that he got quite lucky in his post. You can translate it yourself, but as you can see, this list doesn't contain a lot of the power pieces you may anticipate. It doesn't contain the additional Rosarium Fairies in the form of Moemor. It doesn't contain power orders, and it doesn't even contain Vivace pieces. Not having Vivace is kind of a strange thing to me, because it means you have less unison dress targets for stuff like Parsia. Not only that, not having Vivace is kind of indicative of the fact that you don't intend to ride her, which is strange because Vivace is something that I think as a lot of players who fought against Lianorn, would consider a very strong unit and a reasonable game plan if you don't find Traumend. So what happened instead? A list at top here used a lot of pieces that dig you cards. Sincera draws you 1. Harvest Elf can draw you 1 after it boosts Lianorn as well. This order here is kind of old, but basically counterblast 1 and checks the top 7 to call, I think, 2 Great Ones. Even Lagras is only at 2. Sorry, only at 3. Atlantis is at 4. So, what gives? How is it that we've put less power into Lianorn and we're winning more? Well, building your board is especially important now. Building your board for cheap is important. That is because the other best deck in the room, as you can see, is Prison. And Prison has a much better conversion rate, as you can see. And looking at what Prison has done, this is the number 1 list, this is the guy who topped. Prison has a lot of ways to deal with exactly Leonor. The board interference is really wide. As you can see, the new Clearlight imprisons one on board. There are lots of ways to get stuff off board, a lot of ways to get stuff off the drop zone so that you can't just party it back. You have to interact with the prison, which allows them to net Muna draws. Lifeful Royal clears a guy on the board, and I think the biggest reason why, and you can see this in a lot of other lists, is Dairy Violet. In case you're unfamiliar with Dairy Violet over here, basically what she does is when you put her on the guard circle, if a grade 2 or less unit is attacking you, you can Soul Blast 1, and the attack is stopped completely. As long as you have a card in your prison, you Soul Blast 1 and your opponent's attack fails. So even if your Rosarium Fairy is 100,000 power, or if it's 38,000, it's not gonna hit. I think that in particular is one of the bigger reasons why Lianorn builds that were more focused around power and getting the high roll board of 4 drives and really big Rosariums didn't work out. I think that if more builds were done like this, we would see a better Lianorn conversion rate. But as it stands, Lianorn players are kind of split on how they want to build the deck. But it looks like having a very stable build that focuses a lot more on drawing cards and finding pieces, and not focusing too much on getting Rosarium's power too high, because then you're using deck space on that, when it could be used on draw cards to find stuff like perfect guards for the Seraph Clearlight turn. This seems to be the way that Leonor will probably be built going forward. And I do think if we built Lianorn more like this going forward, we could see a bit more success in more treacherous landscapes where retire and imprisoning is so much more potent. I don't want to quickly write up the deck as fraudulent. I think a lot of people are very quick to do that because, you know, we humans kind of just operate on instinct a lot. And I mean, there's a lot of an agenda against Lianorn. The title of number 1 Lianorn hater is coveted. But I'm trying to be as objective as I can, put my personal bias aside, and I do think that Lianorn could see a bit more success if we tailored our builds more towards just, you know, gathering resources, being more stable, not necessarily focusing on really high power columns. So let's talk more about Prison then. Prison was the deck to beat going into this format. Again, one of the higher play rates and one of the better conversion rates. In fact, it had the largest cut of Top Cut. You can see here 9 prisons made it to Top Cut. That's more than a fourth of Top Cut is Prison. So what gives? Well, Prison as a deck is something that you kind of have to know what your deck does into it. Because it's a control deck, it operates on a very different axis relative to other decks that just kind of do their thing, and then you do your thing, and then you just kind of clash things at one another. Rather, Prison's aim is to control your board, and then slowly grind you out of resources so that they can kill you with Pure Light. I know it is easy to think, oh, they're just going to build up to a Clear Light double citrus turn, but if you have read a lot of the Prison cards, it's very difficult for them to achieve something like that unless you are literally letting them do it. The new Flawless Leela is always going to draw a card with Counterblast 1, Lifeful Royal is going to draw a card with Counterblast 1. They have to run Bulbamine nowadays to try and get the Counterblast, and to fill the soul. This is going to Counterblast 1, and you have to use stuff like Lifeful Royal early so that you can build your board. If you watch some of the stream games, you can see the Krysrain player had to fight 2 prisons in a row, and because of stuff like Lifeful Royal, they were able to push damage really quickly, which puts them in a very precarious spot. So a lot of the time, your prison opponent probably will not be making 5 attacks with Citrus unless you are literally just giving them Counterblast to do it to you. And if that happens, well, you probably don't deserve to win that game, right? I think that's fair to say. What I'm trying to get at is that Prison's game plan is very specific, and you kind of have to know what to do. And a lot of people are trying out new decks, a lot of people are playing different things, and for what it's worth, Prison has been out of the over-centralizing metagame for a long time. So it might be that a lot of players kind of forgot how to deal with it. But that isn't to say Prison's only good because people don't know how to play around it. Completely wrong. I think that's not true at all. I do think it's part of the reason, I don't think it's the whole reason. Prison's cards are very good. Lifeful Royal is a hell of a card. I thought Muna would not be played in such high quantities anymore because the new Prison doesn't let you soul charge as quickly, but I'm wrong because you can just run the old Prison, right? And you can see that a lot of the cards here do a lot of things very efficiently. Citrus is drawing you one, Flawless is drawing you one, Clear Light draws you one for some reason. They're going to dig a lot, they're going to be able to stabilize a lot, and because of stuff like Dairy Violet, it's not in this list, but the Blitz order for Prison that reduces your power based on how many cards are imprisoned is very strong at taking down larger threats on the side. And what it means is that, for the most part, you are going to be put into a position where Prison is going to kill you because they have Clearlight crits ready. And if you survive one Clearlight turn, you then have one turn left to kill them before they destroy you on the clapback, which happens frequently, right? Especially with stuff like the new Prison. If they're playing the new Prison, you're gonna have to worry about the fact that you can't accumulate resources as quickly, or you can't use many powerful on-calls anymore to try and kill them before they get their next turn of Clearlight. I think a lot of Prison cards are very well statted. They have very good card efficiency. The Prison mechanic in general is really tough to deal with for a lot of decks right now. Again, Lianorn is one of the top decks of the format based on play rate, but it struggles really hard into just getting a ton of cards imprisoned and then paying a bunch of costs that Lianorn just can't really afford that much. If you take Traumend to the grind game and she's got to counterblast one every turn, it's kind of rough, and especially if you're trying to call stuff back from your Prison. So again, I think the deck does benefit a lot from needing matchup knowledge, but I think it's also that the deck is just good. Going forward, I would anticipate that you probably need a plan for Prison, or at least you should understand how the deck works so you can build around it. Right now, we can see that there's on stuff like soul fronts, they're on stuff like draws as well. They kind of want to see pieces, they want to fill up their soul because they have to use Muna to accumulate cards. So, if this is one of the best decks in the format, how do you beat it? Like, what does well into something that seems so overbearing? Because they can control your damage points and then kill you from 4. They can go really aggressive with Life or Royal early. What do you do about it? Well, one of the lists that did very well, and you can watch the stream, is Krysrain. And Krysrain, I feel, is a deck that a lot of people didn't really look into because honestly, it's okay. Its stats are okay. You're still having a Twin Drive Vanguard in 2025. That's a bit rough. But what Krysrain does is that they can empty out a lot of spaces where Prison gets to imprison. So, I mean, if you watch the stream, the guy gets 1 to 5 basically every game by Prison. But for what it's worth, they do struggle to hit some of their threshold. So, this card is Eureka, and Eureka bounces a card off the board, so there's one less thing to imprison on board. And importantly, there's one less soul to imprison. And if you don't know, Clearlight can imprison from the soul. Not Clearlight, Pure Light can imprison from the soul. So what we're left with here is a deck that is reasonably powerful and aggressive. It can get quite aggressive early on as well, with Fern set, Eureka, Resius, and the Ace unit. These are really powerful early game pieces that put the pressure on quickly with high power numbers, and can try and make it so your opponent loses before they get a lot of Clearlight accumulation. Sorry, before they get a lot of prisoned cards. You can see here that it's on a mighty high 5 skill to keep digging for cards and use Armel to spawn back pieces. If you watch, I believe it is the top 16 for Prison. Oh, I think it's top 8. And the Prison is playing against a Krysrain. There's a Krysrain Prison game. And on like turn 3, the Krysrain is able to bounce every card away off the board. And that makes it kind of difficult for the opponent to, get all the imprisons they need. What I'm trying to say with all that is that Krysrain might have a good matchup into Prison, and that may be why they end the tournament with a 9% Prison bring rate. This deck does so well. The deck has a lot of aggressive tools to try and kill Prison really quickly. Krysrain herself is super threatening with the critical early, and the power boosts go crazy hard. She's, I believe, a 4-attack deck even before your opponent hits 3. And even though she can't necessarily drive a lot and therefore can't heal out of certain ranges, what she can do is draw a lot. Armel will draw 1, the Ace unit draws 1, Krysrain herself draws 1. There are a lot of ways for you to get pieces ready, especially if you do stuff like a Fire Regalis call Perfect Guard and then bounce it back with Krysrain. You are able to accumulate a lot of ways to guard the Clearlight turn, so that theoretically they don't make it to the Pure Light turn, or you get the resources to survive the Pure Light turn. Krysrain has also some advantages in the fact that 4 is a pretty lethal range for them too, because they can use Krysrain's swing into Divine Skill, so they can keep damage points low on the Prison side as well, making it so they don't have ample counterblast to kill them with. I think that's a completely reasonable thing to do, and for what it's worth, I'm just going to mention it now, you should play Restand Heals this format as well. There's pretty much no reason not to. Leonor restands, Prison restands, in addition to the whole set 9 conga line of assholes who restand. Play the Restand Heals. I cannot foresee a metagame where we stop playing these, basically. These cards are ridiculously good this format. You should play them. So, that's Krysrain, a deck that I think is surprisingly good this format. Now I want to talk about some of the rogue picks that did kind of well. And before I get into rogue, let's talk about another elephant in the room, and I think something we all want to know: how good is Bavsagra now? So actually, 2 Bavsagras made it to Top Cut. That is more than Lianorn, and that's Fern. So I put them here. You can pause and look at them. You can again go online and look at them yourself. But we can see that both variants of Bavsagra are still doing fine. Here we have a very, I was gonna say quirky, but not really quirky. This uses Kankashati, which Counterblast 1 discards a card, Soul Blast 1 discard a card, and you can perform an action. What is the action? I don't exactly remember off the top of my head. But what I do know is that discarding a card procs Ars Virena, and Ars Virena lets you search out the Trick Moon and Verlor combo. This is the consistency buff that Bavsagra got through Ars Virena, and makes them pretty good, like even without having 4 of each. But if you are feeling a bit quirkier, if you're feeling less quirky, this is a very standard build, and it did well. It's also in top 32. So Trick Moon 2-1 didn't kill the deck, but I think it's pretty undeniable that Bavsagra is a lot weaker than it used to be. It's no longer the meta threat. A lot of decks, Prison in particular does, I think, pretty well against it. It's not like Bavsagra has a ton of resources to just kind of go flying away. Every counterblast they use to call something back is a Yukma shot they can't proc. There is a lot to like about Bavsagra this format. It's still, and I think a lot of players don't consciously realize it, but you've probably been in a situation where you are losing, not because Bavsagra has triple drive, drag Vita, crit you, but because you've kind of been outground. You are low on resources because Bavsagra has a lot of ways to hit your board, in the Ace unit and Bavsagra herself, and stuff like Trick Moon and Cindy keep coming back. This makes for a really powerful grind game. And I think that is a lot of the reason that Bavsagra saw a lot of success beforehand too. It was just the best at grinding a game out. It was super consistent. Now it's a lot less consistent, but it still has that grind game. And so for these two lists, both are able to grind out a game, and both can, for what it's worth, still find the Trick and Verlords. They serve Aparla and Ars Virena here search, but you don't even need those. Just, this is fine. What I'm trying to say is you don't have to sell off buffs just yet. I think the deck is still fine. It's not as overbearing. You're not going to win every game anymore. You're not going to just be able to get 3 Trick Moons and then kill your opponent with attacks they can't guard. But if you're good at piloting the deck, and you enjoy grindy longer games, and for what it's worth, the deck is kind of difficult, this is probably a good choice this metagame. Okay, I already kind of spoiled it, so let's just talk about Fern. Fern is what I would consider the least interesting of the Frieren trio. I'll talk about them at some point, I promise. But she doesn't have the cool Alchemagic skill. She doesn't have Stark's flashy kind of Rezael divine skill. What she does have is the ability to pop a card in the back row with Zoltrak, and from that position, they are able to swing tempo with power and Born Interference. And hitting the back row is very important in this format. If you didn't notice, a lot of Prison's really good cards here, in Muna and Life of Royal, are back row cards, and they're going to stick there, and the issue with them is that they accumulate a ton of resource over the course of a game. But with Fern, she pops those. Zoltrak retires one, and it's not like Fern is inconsistent either. Fern has some scaling. Fern has a search, I believe, of the top 7. Fern has a 4 attack minimum with her Vanguard, and with Stark it's 5. Don't sleep on this deck if you can. If you like Frieren, this might be a pretty fun deck for you to try. One thing that's quite fun is having Fern hit in the battle phase, in the main phase, and you check Valnut, and the rest of the battle phase you're gonna have 200 million swings before you've even checked your first drive check. That's pretty cool. Your first battle phase drive check, obviously. And as you can see, most of the deck is in engine, only the T-Fault is not in engine, and I guess Swing Cast. So it'll really feel like you're playing with the Frieren cards. And here is top 4 Leo-odium. Leo-odium is a surprise to me. Leo-odium is a deck a lot of people like to rag on, in the same vein as Leonor as being kind of a fraud deck, for example. But this player made top 4. And we're not just gonna say that every top is luck or whatever, right? What we are gonna do is we're gonna look at the list and see why it had the chance to make a top 4 at all. And I think a lot of it comes down to some of the pieces here that you might have you're either not running or that you've kind of dropped. So let's look at the consistency pieces. This new card is a 10k shield, once you have enough regress gauges, I believe. They're on both Takedown Dragon and Avarice Wrestler. They're on this Colossus that draws a card, Shield Cyclers, Twin Cast. A lot of it is built in such a way where you can defend. Why does that matter? I think a lot of people conceptualize Odium in a way where on turn 4, we're going to Persona Ryan, we're going to rip the Divine Skill, and we're going to kill them. I think instead, what we should maybe look to are some of these really important shield cards and consistency pieces where we are just going to find all the Banes as fast as we can, and with stuff like Takedown Dragon, we're going to find Odium. We're going to perform Persona Ride, have 4 Banes, and we're going to kill the opponent with Persona Ride 4 Bane. And I think you can only do that if you have higher shield value than the average deck. And with this card being a searchable 10k shield of Takedown Dragon, drag a ton of cards, having 4 effect fronts that gain shield, and the restand heals being super relevant in this format, I think that this is probably one of the most consistent ways to build Odium. It is very solid. It sacrifices a lot of high power ceilings. Like, it's not like they're on 4 of the Colossus and 4 of Anachronos so they can always bounce in and out of the gauge, but rather they have a lot of ways to draw cards and find pieces, and they can find a lot of shield. Another thing to note is that Anachronos Dragon matches really well into Prison. It can snipe back row. There are a lot of things it can snipe. It snipes toys, block cores as well. Furthermore, Odium doesn't restand. Not in a traditional way, in a way that makes effect heals work. So your opponent is going to be stuck on extra restand heals that don't do anything into a deck that will probably kill them on the Divine turn. So why do I bring this up? Even though this is just one top, it's just one player, it could reasonably be luck. Well, I'm bringing this up because I think this is going to be the de facto way that we build our decks for this format, or at least something you should consider in your decks. So I think Lianorn is a good example of a meta deck that's going to do it, and I think I have some rogue deck examples here, like Astacion. So this is an Astacion that goes 8-2 and hits top 35. Very sad, almost had it. When this happens, it's normally just the breakers aren't great. But look at this list. Not playing the Crit Dragon, not playing Roaming Prison Dragon. This is just very solid. 2 Energy Cyclers, 3 Broccolis, not playing something like Fire Regalis, rather playing Twincast. What this does is lets you guard, and it lets you play for a floor of power that Astacion has, which is in his slow scaling of the Blast token, and then killing you with plus 35 to the front row on Persona right turn. I think a lot of decks in this metagame, and I think in Vanguard in general right now, have really high base powers, and I think trying to push the ceiling of the deck is almost always wrong if your deck is already in a decent spot. You know, if you've seen the recent Bubetsu Omina Grugio, I mean, that's Omina Grugio. The deck isn't very good, so it needs that extra bit to kind of do more. But a lot of decks that just are like 3 or 2 sets out of the meta reasonably could see some success if we just put in a couple more ways to shield, a couple more ways to get to the turns we need to get to. And this isn't the only example I have of this. I have a very, this is Orphis with a different example. I have a new example here. This is Jheva, and this is Jheva. As you can see, Aaron025 says, Jheva deck I use for WGP Tokyo, score 8-2, didn't make top 35. That's fine. And he explains here how Bavsargra can make an early 40,000 point shield on turn 2. And you can see here they're playing the crossover Dead Searcher. They're not on a super high count of prayer dragons. They're just on basically the bare necessity so that they can achieve Bavsargra, Stravarina, and high Ars Varina count so that they can always find it. What does this tell us about how a deck can do well in these large events? Well, I think a lot of us consider Jheva as this cool toolbox of prayer dragons that plays really aggressively, needs to find Stravarina or you lose, needs to find something on a Wednesday or you lose. Just a lot of things need to go right for it. So this player seems to have minimized the amount of things that need to go well for the deck. It's very stable in how big of a shield Bavsargra can get. Ars Varina can always find stuff for you. You're always looking for Prayer Dragons with Energy Blast 3. There's a good chance that if more Jhevas pivoted to a very stable build like this, we could see a bit more success in larger events. The alternative path I have for you guys is something like this Orphis list here, which is basically how Orphis has always been built, but as the player says, they aim for turn 3 kills. If you can't beat stuff like Bavs and Prison in long games, you may as well go for the turn 3 kill. Go as fast as you can. And it's a lot less stable. This player ended up 6-3, which isn't a great scoreline, but I just wanted to show you an example of an aggressive strategy that could work. And at 6-3, I think maybe some of the Leonorns probably ended it like this, right? There's a pretty good chance that a fair amount of the Leonorns also were on pretty aggressive lists, much like how this Orphis would be on, and ended up falling just a bit short, much like this Orphis. So this is a potential path you can take, playing a very hyper-aggressive list that goes for turn 3 kills, turn 4 kills, but you have to understand that in a 10-round tournament, it's pretty unlikely that that works out for you. If you're on like a lower end tournament, like just lower player base, like 5 round, 6 round, you could theoretically go for a very aggressive build and just not get lucky, but rather you are less likely to get unlucky over those 6 rounds, and then you'll see success there. But for these large events, it does seem like stability is going to always be the way to go. You can see that in Jheva build, you can see that in the Bavsagra build, you can see it in, well, not really this Krysrain build, but we didn't talk about Youth Perk. Let me quickly talk about Youth Perk. Also one of the newer cards in the set, also kind of plays, again, his ceiling isn't much higher, but he does have a much greater consistency with Antifed, who is crazy. That's all I have to say about Youth Perk. Don't doom about Youth Perk, the deck is good, okay? and filling the board up, playing on 4 draws just to try and see pieces, try and make sure that you always have hand. This seems to be one of the best ways to go right now. I'm not saying sacrifice any card that says gain power to play 10k shields, but we're gonna have to start finding the balance between the two. You're gonna need to start looking at your decks and thinking to yourself, how can I output the most pressure possible whilst maintaining guard? And I don't mean guard as in drawing cards, I mean putting in cards that do have shield. I'm talking playing Broccolis and a Station. I'm talking 10k shields here. If you haven't noticed, a lot of the good decks in the format all have cards that say gain shield. This shield quite literally gains shield, and it's probably the bane of a lot of players' existence, this Bavsagra shield. Those Frieren is a deck made to gain shield with Trickstar. I believe some of the Fern cards gain shield? I might be wrong on this. Fern might actually just be a very aggressive deck. Oh, Stark gains shield. Yeah, a lot of the meta decks just have a lot of shield to them. Sure, this deck has shield, but again, it's tailored in such a way where you're playing a ton of guardless cards here. Cards that go on the board and just aren't favored well into the metagame. So what is the main takeaway I have from this video for you guys is you may want to just try looking at your deck right now and seeing what pieces you've put in to get a higher power ceiling. You want to see what you've put in your deck that is just made so you can have a hype moment and aura moment where you get a really big number and go, wow, my number is huge. And then lose the next turn because your opponent had a perfect guard and then you die. Instead, maybe look for new avenues. Look for consistency pieces, look for ways to improve your guard, and overall, I mean, the metagame is really diverse. Right now, there isn't a clear winner. I know it looks like there is a clear winner, but I promise you that there is still evolution to be had in the metagame. I'm not saying that Prison will definitely be dethroned, but I'm saying that any one of these decks here could theoretically come back up. So don't be disheartened if you don't like Prison. There are tons of playstyles you can enjoy, and I think it's worth looking into the styles you do enjoy and trying your best to tailor decks that are both aggressive enough to put on the pressure, but don't sacrifice too much aggression for your shielding and defenses. Stability, draw cards, find your pieces. Don't focus on making 108,000 power Rosarium Fairies. While it's really flashy, it may not necessarily translate to a good win rate. Okay, that's all I have from you guys. Thank you for sitting through all this rambling. I hope looking at these and me talking through the decks has helped. I've provided again some of the more stray lists here for you to look at. I'll probably put them in the description if I don't forget. If I do forget, just ping me on the comment section, say you forgot to put the list. I would like to see them, and I'll do it. Okay, I'll find time to do it. Thank you so much. Hope to see you guys continue watching my content. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. It means a lot. I hope to do like a celebration stream at some point. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.